This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a portfolio to showcase your work, a store to sell your products and services, or a blog to share your ideas, Squarespace gives you everything you need to make your next move into a reality. Not to mention, with Squarespace's beautifully designed templates and customizable features, creating a beautiful website is a simple and intuitive process. Simply add and arrange your content with a click of a mouse. No programming needed. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and use the offer code TEST, T-E-S-T, to get 10% off your first purchase. And thank them for sponsoring this week's podcast.
Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, July 6th, 2017, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this post-long weekend podcast. It feels like it's only been 3 days since we've talked to you last. I'm Norm, joined, of course, by Jeremy Williams.
Salutations.
And Kishore is out this week. I think he's traveling in Europe with his family, so we have back to the podcast. First time I've podcasted with Zach Radding, friend of Tested and general maker of things?
Maker of things.
Maker of things. I wasn't on the show. You guessed it here when I was gone. I was in Europe, actually.
I got to fill in for you.
Yes, yeah. And I have to confess, I did not listen to that podcast.
Excellent. So
I was on my honeymoon.
I can just repeat everything I said last time.
That's what I'm hoping.
Perfect.
Right? Let's fill this hour and a half. For people who are listening to this, for you it's the first time, a brief introduction. What do you do?
Sure.
We know you personally and with tangentially related projects, but what's
So I build stuff for a living. I'm a professional maker. So people come to me with ideas and sort of early products, and I build prototypes of them. And I build the first of many of lots of different things. So a lot of electric vehicle things. I worked on the one-wheel skateboard. I know that you guys have had some experience with that. I worked on an early prototype of their battery pack, Faraday bicycle, the 3DR drone. I worked on the
Solo.
The Solo.
So these are industrial products. These aren't just one-off art commissions. You kind of
I do both.
I
do both. So yeah, sometimes people could just have like, I want a thing in the lobby of a hotel, and I'll build a one-off thing. But a lot of times it's a product, or actually most of the time it's something that never sees the light of day, because so many products kind of go through the design cycle, get to a point, and then either for cost reasons or for functionality or for who knows what, they get canned. So I build just lots of different things for different people. And
aren't you currently working on your own Teardrop trailer?
Well, yeah, that's my own personal project.
That's still equally amazing.
It's a fun one. I mean, they've been building them.
What is that?
So a camping trailer. So you pull
okay.
So they designed them, I think, the first in like the 20s or 30s. It came out in Popular Mechanics. There was kind of an article about it that somebody built one, and then over the years they've just kind of iterated. And about 3 or 4 months ago, I thought, I've got this new CNC large router. What could I build on that? And I was looking at kind of just interesting things on Pinterest, and all of a sudden this sort of thread of trailers came through.
And they're called teardrop trailers because they are shaped like a teardrop.
Kind of.
They're not these boxy U-Hauls.
Yeah. They have sort of a more aerodynamic design, and they're really efficient. That's one of the things that I really like about it. Like it's almost like a boat where everything has a place, and it's really optimized
everything
for storage.
Is stored, yeah.
It's really kind of beautiful in that way. So I'm taking my own stab at that.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, you kind of have this dream job. When we meet kids at Maker Faire, or even people who work at firms and experiment and tinker on their own, you get to tinker nonstop, and nothing you ever make is the same. And so every project you start on, every commission you get is a new challenge.
It is. So yeah, I'm really fortunate that way. I mean, every once in a while I sort of like go, oh man, it'd be really nice to have just a regular job and get paid on every Friday and kind of work on the same thing for a long time. But then I snap out of it and go, I love building new stuff every day. So yeah,
But it's wide ranging too. If you're talking about from a electric skateboard to a drone to a trailer, right? Like when people come to you, what do they know is your expertise? What are they?
So
what
they
are
don't usually. They kind of don't know. So I usually get all my business through word of mouth. People just kind of hear, oh yeah, there's this guy that builds stuff.
Okay.
So I do a lot of just like low level electronics, so like board layout and fabrication, and then do some embedded system stuff. So it's kind of the programming, and then when I weld up some frame for something, people go, oh wait, who welded this? I'm like, I weld that too. So I love collecting skills and tools and just abilities, because it does add to my business. I have an excuse for doing that, and also I just enjoy it. So
and that's what I want to talk about, because it's not just one process. You're talking about like from welding to electronics. Typically, people specialize in one of those things.
Smarter people do. I'm really mediocre at a lot of things.
But at the prototype stage, it's easier to work with one person to get you something that's functional. If they're going to crowdfund something, if they want a proof of concept, it's much easier to work with you, because then all the lessons learned from prototyping get passed on to future iterations.
No, I get to pull a lot from kind of my archive of just techniques and a lot of electronics, and even a lot of mechanical things. There's sort of almost Lego units of pieces that you attach together to make different things. So like a power supply or Wi-Fi module, or and sort of the benefit that I have is I've been doing it long enough where it's like I've got experience with a whole bunch of these different things. So I just kind of pull from the off the shelf of like, oh yeah, if I want to do a big beefy power supply, I've got a design that works pretty well. So it works nicely for my customers as well as me.
Do you feel that there's an increase of people in the crowdfunding area and hardware that come to you, or have you felt that?
A little bit. I mean, a couple years ago, I think back when there was kind of that economic downturn, a lot more people kind of jumped out there and the sort of start something themselves, and I got a bunch more kind of, I don't want to say amateurs, but people that didn't have the experience,
but had an idea,
and they wanted to crowdfund something, and that's turned into. I mean, the one wheel skateboard was kind of in that same realm.
Right.
The Faraday bicycle was kind of in that same realm, where they started out with a crowdfunding campaign, and then kind of grew from there. So it's.
And do you have interest in working for is there a company that like, if someone comes to you with an idea and like, oh, I really like this idea, I kind of want to work and shepherd this product through?
Most of them that I take on are ones that I like. If I really don't like it, I kind of try to pass on it. Just I've worked on things that I don't like, and it's less inspiring.
But you're not interested in embedding yourself and seeing a product get to the end. You just want to go with the prototype, or do you actually stick with it?
Well, I mean, it depends on the project. I mean, I have to fight that urge to kind of get sucked in, because I have lots of projects. So yes, the new sparkly thing is always a draw, and I'm like, oh wait, I could go build this full time, and that sounds great. And again, to get that paycheck once a month or whenever it is. Right. But at the same time, it's like, oh, but then I would miss out on all these other things. So yeah.
How does someone get your job? Like I know it's a question everyone else asking out there.
So it's about building things. I mean, and I think a lot of your community is sort of in that process. It's building things, it's putting it out there, it's putting themselves out there. I get all my business through word of mouth, and it's from me building something and then people seeing it. And I think it's the same thing with whether it's a cosplayer that's building a costume, or somebody that's crowdfunding something. They see that, oh look, somebody can build something and actually produce it. That means more than anything. So,
I think that's probably what some people in the community don't realize they can do is there's a lot of obsession with building a finished thing, right? If you're building a proper costume or even an electronics thing, like you want a prototype, but then you also want to get something that looks like it's the final product.
Sure.
And there are many tiers of working along up the process of a piece of hardware.
Oh, and I think that shows off even better. So like if you show the process and you go, okay, look, I've gone down these avenues, and I tried these different things. Well, if somebody from the outside is looking for somebody to do that for them, they want to know that they've explored all the different avenues and they've tried different things, and they can prototype at a low level as well as a really polished level.
Yeah, when we visit startups and we see they're very proud of their prototypes. We find a lot of startups, and they roll out from their archives, from the back room, like the 12 different stages of a piece of hardware, and we love seeing what the very first one looks like. And it's now, most of the time, it's you see the 3D printed form factor and how things have changed, and there's a lot of interesting things you can glean from a piece of hardware from that development process, but they never talk about the people who made that first prototype.
It might have been me. Who knows?
Exactly, right? Like you always assume it's just the same in-house engineer who prototyped it, but no,
Well, usually they don't have employees at that point. So a lot of time it's one or two people, in a garage, and they just don't have the facilities. Maybe they've got some friends and family gave them some money to kind of help start them, start going, but they don't have a big 3D printer or a milling machine or ways to do injection molded plastics or whatever it is. So.
Do you find people at that stage want to hire you for a flat rate, or that they're willing to do it like an hourly thing?
Or equity.
They all want me to work on equity, absolutely. And I have to sort of say, sorry, if I only worked on equity, I would be poor. It's because so many things never see the light of day.
Too many gambles.
Right.
And
it's like Shark Tank, but instead of the billionaires who just offer up the money, which the companies need that, right? It's almost more important to have the people who have the know-how to make your prototypes to sell that. This is one stage before that.
Oh, it's maybe 4 or 5 stages before it.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, people always, everybody's scrappy in the beginning. So, and I try to work with people, as best I can, and but I have to charge. It's just that's business for me. Otherwise,
right.
I have to pay for rent and keeping the lights on. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Is it just you, or do you work with a team?
It is just me.
Wow.
Over the years, I've had people come in, and I have people that I call on if for certain things to help with assembly. Like if I get some big project, I can call up people to say, "Hey, help me build 1,000 of these things," or put together circuit boards or wiring or cable harnesses. But you just kind of get a network of companies and vendors that you can work with to get stuff built.
I mean, it's awesome, and I know people out there probably have more questions. We could do a whole podcast, chatting about this stuff.
Maybe we should,
and maybe we should. But for people out there who have, I know people are going to be interested in the type of work you do, because people are always asking, what's the future of this? If you're getting into 3D printing now and you're designing circuit boards, is it just for prop making? Like, is this what's the career future? And this is absolutely one place to go.
I think people assume that sort of the product development is kind of a new thing, and with 3D printing and laser cutting, but it's like, well, no, this has been happening since the Industrial Revolution, and people have been building things with tools, and it's just we have more accessibility to them now. But yeah, I mean, getting into product design, industrial design, I mean, there's so many different sort of pathways into taking that hobby and making it a career. So mine's just one of them.
Awesome. Let's get to pop culture news.
Pop culture news.
So we had July 4th weekend, a long weekend. It's always weird when July 4th is on a Tuesday, because I think maybe 20% of the people I talked to had to work on Monday. And I hope neither of you worked on Monday and took the long weekend.
A lot of people took the day off anyway. Just took it off.
I worked on July 4th.
You worked on July. Well, there are some people also we know that just don't celebrate the holiday, or at least don't find the festivities,
like everyone
the
not
fireworks.
in America.
Well, yes, everyone not in America, but also people in America. Like for example, I don't think Adam celebrates July 4th the same way a lot of people celebrate July 4th in terms of the picnics and the hot dogs. Did you guys do? Did you work, Zach?
But then I also went and watched fireworks.
Okay, all right, Jeremy, did you celebrate? Did you?
Well, it's my wife's birthday as well. She's a Yankee Doodle dandy, so we spent the day in the park celebrating.
Is that the technical term for people whose birthday is July 4th?
It's what I've always called them. But to be honest with you, it was a beautiful day, had a wonderful day, but I don't care for the nighttime. Now that I have young children and a cat and a wife who particularly doesn't like loud booms either.
Yeah.
San Francisco, as I imagine every city these days, is like a war zone. It sounds like a war zone. Everywhere you look at nighttime, even like at noon.
Oh yeah,
like people can't wait.
They're shooting stuff off.
They're got the firecrackers and they're just lighting them, and who knows where they got them from?
Yeah,
what's the closest state that you can buy these from?
In California.
You can't buy these.
You can buy. I went camping up in the mountains this past weekend and drove past a stand in just north of here, probably an hour, and there was big stands of fireworks.
Airborne fireworks? I mean, these were
I didn't stop and buy them.
These were like 200 feet explosions in the sky. These were loud fireworks.
You could buy them in the city if you walk down the right places. I remember walking through Chinatown on July 3rd, I think, a couple years ago, and there are people that instead of selling, they take away the drugs, and then they roll out
the mortars.
They bring out the mortars. orders, and you want one that will set off 10 car alarms or 50 car alarms, and that's their
Exactly.
metric, right?
I don't care for it.
Right. Will's talked about it a bunch, and actually was down at his place in Pacifica, and that really is
Same thing.
a war zone. I had heard about it for years, but never really experienced July 4th down there. But yeah, throughout the day from 4 p.m. on, the people are already setting off things in the sky, and like there's a whole range of like your Roman candles and your sparklers, like the stuff that people like light in the middle of the street, right? Like just like they're standing in their garage or in their garage, and that's fun. I think that's totally fine.
Yep.
And then there are
Totally
the fireworks.
illegal, and we don't endorse that. But
Sure.
Our sparklers
I think
are
it's-
illegal.
It's
I think anything that is, I mean, at least in the city and even where we're at, it's like no
Nothing at all.
fireworks.
impossible to enforce. I think they can only cite you if they see you in the act of lighting the firework. I think, and so if people do it in their backyard, they're never going to get caught or cited. But there are also that category of fireworks just to be loud or
Obnoxious.
obnoxious for the and I can't stand those. I like the pretty stuff.
Yep. I'm with you.
And the glittery things in the sky, and it's really cool to see, and like even things that are 4 blocks down, you can tell there's a difference between when you see it and when you hear it. So that's like cool, right? You can like try to judge how far that is away.
Yeah.
But the stuff that's just like a flashbang in the sky, that's obnoxious.
Absolutely. Or the
Yeah.
ones that don't even go up in the sky; they just go off next to your car.
Right.
No, thank you.
Now, how did your dog fare?
She was totally great. It was her first July 4th.
It's her first 4th of July, yeah.
Her very first July 4th, and we definitely had a handful of treats ready just in case. But she was definitely nervous, wide-eyed, but not shaking too much, and not trying to jump out of our arms to run back in the house. So I think we got a good one. Or she'll be traumatized forever, and so you never know. Right.
Neil deGrasse Tyson had a great tweet yesterday where he said, "Appreciating the fireworks tonight, hug a chemist and thank them for." And he listed off all the chemicals that are in fireworks.
I also hung out with Gary Whitta yesterday, and so part of our July 4th celebrations was we watched Twitch streams of PUBG, Player Underground Unknowns, Player Unknown.
Yeah, Gary and Will would have done this any day.
Yes, Battlegrounds, right?
Let's say such a traditional 4th.
Yes, exactly. It's crazy. There are 200,000 people playing this game concurrently, and it's in early access. And it's only been out for a couple of months.
Have we really ever just talked about this game?
I don't think so. It's such in the zeitgeist. Zach, do you know about this?
No. Tell me about it.
What is 100 players?
Yeah. So do you play PC games or computer games?
Absolutely.
And like shooting games?
Yeah, first-person shooters.
Yeah, so you know of like Arma and
Yep,
DayZ,
yep.
right? And people out there, 99% of you guys know about this. So it's, I think there was a trend in people have always wanted the war game, the great war game, right? Back 15 years ago is Battlefield, where
Sure.
you can get 32 players in a game to simulate World War II. And then there was this, and then that always kind of was the counterpoint to your 6v6 Counter-Strike type games,
Right.
your deathmatch styles, tactical games. And then there was this wave of like your realistic shooters, which kind of started with like Operation Flashpoint and Arma, your big scale, a lot of European developers made these large scale, very realistic simulators. They're more sims than they were action shooters.
Right.
And DayZ kind of took that to a real extreme where they made you forge for everything. You had like this upkeep they do. Like people love these ideas. They're basically RPGs
Sure.
masking as shooters. But this game, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, is like the perfect mixture of all of these. It's best described. It's battle royale in the video game.
You ever see Battle Royale?
The Japanese movie.
I did never see it.
No, never did.
Battle Royale was a Japanese film. I want to say it was about almost 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago now. But the story was, it's basically the Hunger Games. School children were put every year, the terrible youth of Japan.
Criminals.
Criminal.
Yeah.
Like basically it's like dystopian future, right? Kids in Japan were taught a lesson they dumped like 30 school children on an island and gave them each a backpack that had a weapon in it, and they had to survive.
Right.
And one kid comes out every year as the survivor. So it was the Hunger Games, right?
So that's the deal. But there's 100 players in Battleground, and everybody jumps out of an airplane.
And it's last man standing.
And it's literally it's last man standing.
But whoever wins gets a chicken dinner. Like that's what
Winner,
you
winner,
want.
chicken dinner.
And-
Got
and-
it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But I think if you say that, I think that it's immediately understandable. People understand, like, 100 people come in, which is, anyone who's played games for as long as we have, that seems like an unfathomable thing.
And single death, you're out. There's no
single death, you're out.
No respawning.
No respawning.
Fairly realistic.
And it's simulator style realism in that when you drop out, you have nothing. You literally have to find the backpack that you put things in, find the boots to put on.
Right.
But the map you're in, it's not a Counter-Strike style run and gun. It is a 10-kilometer wide island. So
you have to travel.
You travel. And it is, you parachute out of a giant C-130, and you see literally parachutes coming out. The game starts the moment.
So how many hours are these games?
They're only 40 minutes long.
See, there's a ring that encloses constantly into a random spot in the island. So everyone they have to stay inside that ring.
Your goal is not only to stay alive and kill other people,
but stay in the ring.
And the ring is it's this, the fictional wall that comes at you. And so you can't just hide in a tree or hide in a house forever unless you're in the center of where the action. That's a random place.
Yeah.
And so they're like, it's like very much like the Hunger Games. You have 5 minutes of combat or 5 minutes of foraging, and they'll say now the ring is getting smaller and the zone is getting smaller, and everyone starts running.
Right. So this is your gladiator games that you're just like your esports watching.
Well, I think it's become. It's a game that is successful because not only is it fun to play, it's very intense to play. Even though you could be playing for 40 minutes and you might encounter one person,
right?
And the amount of action, shooting action, the ratio of shooting action to just running around surviving is 95-1, but it's also fun to watch. And so you have these Twitch streamers, people who are now they're playing this instead of all your other DayZ type games, where we saw I think 30,000 people watching these Twitch streamers at once.
Do you think it's fun to watch for people who aren't players?
I think, yeah, absolutely. Because we watched it in the living room yesterday, and there were people who were there who weren't players, and we just explaining, and the tension is palpable because you don't even listen to the people who are Twitch streaming, and a lot of them have these funky personalities, mustaches and wigs, and they're Ron Burgundy type characters. But just telling the people watching, this person needs to survive. 99 other people are trying to survive, and that scale of that number. It feels intense. If you said it's 12, if you said it was 12 people or 20 people, great. That doesn't mean anything. But to survive and to be the best and to watch someone get a chicken dinner, be the best out of 100, and have people commit up to an hour of their time, like that feels like an accomplishment.
Are these all first-person streams?
They're all third person. Most people play either first or third, and so most people play in third person because you can see around corners. But the streams are all very like if you watch any type of Twitch stream, people playing games, they all have this format now, right? It's a game capture,
right?
You have a software, and then you have a green screen person, and now like everyone, and Gara's making an observation about this. Everyone has like their esports chair. Which is like a racing chair. It looks like a seat pulled out of a F1 race car, except like they're not comfortable, but they make you look like some type of esports athlete.
Maybe that's a new business. Esports chairs.
Esports chairs.
I mean, it is a business,
right?
They're these chairs that are marketed to gamers
to make them look like more
chairs.
competitors, right? Game chairs, right? It's not even like it's just design. It's not ergonomics. There's functionality in that. It's not like there's speakers behind you for 5.1. It's just something purely to make you look like you are some type of athlete. Like what sport has people sitting in all day? Well, race car drivers. Let's give them the chairs. Give the gamers these chairs.
But some of these people also have hooked up green screens behind their chair, like mounted directly to the frame.
So Will's green screen setup, and Will has a green screen setup now. I saw it yesterday. It's really funny. He actually has a legit green screen setup. It's like he has tripods, and it's this big green screen
with proper lighting
proper lighting, like a 4-foot by 3-foot thing that's put behind him. What you think of as a traditional green screen, but people now purely for streaming, there are green screen attachment. I think that Jeremy talking about that you literally are flags that you just stab into your chair and have like a little fan. They fan out behind you.
Why not just a hat?
And right, exactly, because you want to show off their chair. You want to show off your gear. The only thing you need to block out the camera is behind your head.
Not everybody has the epic display behind them.
And some people have IKEA displays and have done set dressing, but they have their video in the corner, and then they have their Patreon links and their Twitter links and their top supporter of the day, and people are making a living Twitch streaming. I don't understand it.
How many people are making a living Twitch streaming?
Hundreds.
Hundreds, you think?
I think hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah. The economic model is completely different now. I mean, it's...
Well, you can also do it not in the Bay Area and
Exactly, right?
You don't have to make that much money to live in different areas. So
you can live in a McMansion in Idaho and with a good internet connection and some good, if you have the personality, and which isn't easy, right?
And a green
you have to
screen.
be on and a green screen, and you've played this game, and you can talk about the game. You can make a living, and I think a lot of people are hungry out there doing these things, and they're fun to watch. And then there's this meta level of people who do that because you have thousands of these Twitch streams going concurrently. People recording their own sessions, and they submit them to an archivist who then every week releases the best of, right? And you have the YouTube video that has 20 minutes of highlights, the ESPN of this, right? Like it's kind of amazing.
New pop culture.
It's absolutely the new pop culture. And to your point about the tournament play, what I would love to see out of this PUBG culture is stretching out the game. 40 minutes per game, it feels like there's tension there, and it's definitely fun to watch for maybe an hour at a time. But when you bring it to a tournament setting,
Right,
and
with
you turn it into poker,
right,
you do the $500 buy-in, right? $500 buy-in, that's $50,000 in a pot already, right? And then you stretch it out to a 2-hour game, right? These Twitch streamers could get their sponsors, right? Their esports chair sponsors to pony up, or their Patreon sponsors. If you're popular, get your Patreon supporters to pay your buy-in, right, to a poker tournament, right,
Sure.
and be fun to watch, and slow the game down, make it 2 to 3 hours, and get some spectating, and even the thought of what does it mean to have commentary or spectate these tournaments, right? How would you spectate a 100-person game? Well, you'd have to maybe there'd have to be some type of spectator mode that on the back end where you maybe
instant replays, and you could be able to
exactly. You'd have
able
to
to actually
recording
have that.
everything,
Right.
and someone would need to have some Overwatch style, a top down. Okay, 2 blips are getting closer together. Something's going to happen. Let's record these next 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and then call that, and then put an instant replay, or have 5 commentator teams commentate the top 5 seeded players, right? Because they're probably the most interesting.
This has all been done with every sports
Absolutely.
cast,
Yeah, right.
So-
And I think those models absolutely apply. If ESPN2 can put drone
Right.
racing and put money in that, and I don't think there are 200,000 people playing drones, right? Racing drones at any time. This is a much bigger market. There's opportunity here. Put it on the Ocho, put it on ESPN8. That's fine. But I think there's absolutely a market here to do some interesting sports commentary and broadcasting.
I think the game has to have it built into it, though. There's got to be features built into the game to allow for interesting cinematography and effects and augmentation of effects.
Right.
Or in slow motion and capture and all kinds of manipulation that hasn't been done yet. The fact that they have real-time engines and that hasn't been exploited yet is unfortunate.
That's why it's early access. I mean, the game is also coming out on consoles later this year. Xbox has that 6-month exclusive.
Oh, I just mean in general. I just mean esports in general. That I have not seen that exploitation of the real-time engine for broadcast purposes.
Well,
Even a game like Overwatch?
I mean, no. I mean, that's a brilliant game. Absolutely.
But
By all
they're
means.
starting to. I mean, they're starting to incorporate just live streaming as part of the engine. That's been going on for the past year or two of it's built in.
Yeah.
So
or the console.
right? So, but I mean, I could imagine that's there's going to be an announcer mode where you can then jump in as an announcer or
RTS
commentator.
games have done that for forever. Right, real-time strategy games like StarCraft, even the old Command and Conquer. There was I remember, I think the last big CNC game had a spectator mode where the spectators could throw in arrows, point in, and they wouldn't count as you need to take an idle slot. They would
Right.
never interfere with the game. And StarCraft, I think, has this in the replays. Where in the replays you can spectate, switch between players
a number of the games, and it's been a while since I've played an RTS, but when you die, before you respawn, there's usually that delay. You can kind of fly around and do a quick spectate or see your death or see
Right.
There's all of that. So, but again, not at the esports level.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
PUBG.
PUBG.
I know it's a fascinating cultural phenomenon.
Weird.
And if you have favorite people that you watch play this game, let me know because I'd love to watch more of it. I'm terrible. I've only played the game a handful of times. And,
It's a stressful game.
and yeah, it's stressful
I don't
to
know if
play
I
and
need
to watch.
more of that stress in my life.
All right. Some other news popping up in the pulp culture world. Have either of you listened to Jay-Z's new album?
You know,
Are either of you subscribers
I
to
am not
Tidal?
Tidal.
I'm not a Tidal subscriber, but it was up on iHeartRadio for the first day, so anybody could listen to it.
Oh, that's
And-
interesting.
It was part of the promotion. Yeah, so the album was released exclusively to Tidal and Sprint customers for a 6-month period. Interestingly, you couldn't listen to it if you were a new Tidal subscriber. So I wonder how many people signed up and were immediately disappointed. But apparently the album is fantastic. It has already gone platinum, which is 1 million albums sold, which is interesting that a streaming album can even go platinum.
Right,
since-
because what's sold?
Exactly. But it's interesting. There's actually an article about that on, what was it, 9 to 5 Mac. Apparently the RIAA actually has a math for that. And they consider 1,500 on-demand audio streams to be one album sale.
Wait, say that again?
Yes. So if an album or a song
Yeah.
gets 1,500 streams,
That counts as
That counts as one album sale.
Now, is that equated monetarily, or is that just an arbitrary?
To get the
someone
platinum.
someone who bought an album probably in their lifetime will listen to it 1,500 times.
Well, but maybe the math works out financially as well. You get the penny per listen, and then you multiply that out. I don't know.
that's an interesting point. Like if you buy an album, they're considering buying an album that I'm going to listen to it 1,500 times. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I've listened
any
to
album 15.
any album. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I don't know. That's just interesting math.
Because I don't think it's sales, royalties wise.
No.
The
I-
royalties
No,
for
no.
1,500. That's still in the pennies.
I think it's like Nielsen numbers. It's just like this is a way to rate how popular things
They
are.
have to have a metric.
Yeah.
huh?
So things can still go platinum because we need that in our society.
And typically platinum's how many sales? Is
a million.
Is a million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had 1.5 billion streams.
I mean, I think the platinum model, 1 million record sales today, obviously is not 1 million record sales 10 years ago because people aren't buying records the same
Right.
way, but also isn't the same as 1 million record sales when they first started it because 1 million meant a lot more and distribution was different, right? So what does that actually mean? Like, what are they rating in terms of, like, is it cultural awareness? Is it it has to be relative.
Well,
It has-
and we don't get our media the same way. I mean, before it was radio listens, right? Like that's how we were introduced to new music. So then we went out and bought it.
Yeah.
But now it's all streaming. So now we kind of are stuck in our own echo chamber of our own music because we just hear what we like. We don't hear that new.
I used to keep a cassette in the radio on record pause, ready for that song to come on the radio that I liked.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Bam, grab it.
Were they full songs or did the station have the station ID?
You'd get the station ID and the DJ say, and now coming up next is...
Well, they never say coming up next because they can only say in the next 5 songs, like in this next batch. Because
Right.
if
Yeah.
you preempted it, if telegraphed it too much, then it would be like on demand almost, and then the record labels wouldn't like that. Yeah, it's fascinating. So, have either of you tried Tidal though? I think I subscribed for
No.
1 month because it was their big selling point was audio quality was going to be this very high bit rate, almost
Is it lossless, right?
lossless.
lossless.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't struggle with audio quality with Spotify. Like I don't go, man, I wish this had a few more bits.
And do you even max out your Spotify? Because most people
No,
don't even max
I don't
out.
even max it out. Yeah, right. You could even go a higher bit rate.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think what I normally. I mean, it's in my office, kind of streaming in the background. Over the drills and saws. Like I don't need a few more bits.
Right. Yeah. I mean, different strokes for different folks. I mean, Patrick Norton, in front of the show,
Yeah.
he cares quite a lot about audio quality. He has lossless, encodes on his phone, probably.
Yeah, it's the situation
Sure.
that you're listening to, but also your
Absolutely.
hardware, right? And if you're not going to invest in the hardware to best experience it,
Right.
Then and have the experience and have the years of listening to know the difference. I mean, yeah,
I kind of like my low standards. It keeps it easy.
Exactly.
This is interesting. So the Jetsons are coming back.
Meet George Jetson as a live action show. I think this is fantastic. So the Jetsons, everyone knows, is the Flintstones in the future.
Okay.
It was basically the same thing. And it's coming back as a live action show next year.
Wow. Is this on a streaming service or is this going to be on broadcast?
Broadcast, I think. Man.
Oh my goodness. So I don't know. I haven't read the story yet, so I don't know if there's casting, but I always thought that if they were going to do a live action Jetsons show,
Yeah.
the perfect George Jetson would be Ed Helms.
Oh, really? Okay. I mean,
I could see that.
Ed Helms can do anything. I bet.
Right, but he plays that the dad role,
Yeah.
who's also very frantic and like always freaking out about stuff,
All right.
pretty well.
That sounds good. Yeah, so it's set in 2118, I guess. Yeah, because that's 100 years into the future for next year, which the original show was set 100 years in ahead of 1962.
So there's also apparently in the works an animated Jetsons movie that may be coming out. But okay, this is interesting. It has to be set 100 years in the future. Is that the best way to tell a Jetson story? Like, wouldn't you rather still have the Jetsons that was set 100 years, the version of 100 years in the future back when it originally
From
aired?
1962?
From 1962.
But it wouldn't be where it's at. That's the problem. Like in our sci-fi advances faster than reality. I mean, we're already halfway there.
So I agree, right? Like you couldn't say it's 1962. Call it 2117. That's 2118. That's fine. But the version of that future.
You're saying you want the mishmash of retro and future.
I want the retro future.
Yeah.
That's what was appealing about the Jetsons.
Yeah, I like
I think
that
that still appeals today. If you try to be a futurist today, and
Right.
it's almost very dystopian.
Well, it's like in the Star Wars movies when they flash back to the non prequels, like that feels good. Like when they do a modern representation of the original Star Destroyer, I'm like, ooh, yeah, I like that.
Right.
So-
show me the design, and there's a wealth of this design aesthetic from that era, not just in the Jetson TV show, but in the '60s version of the future. So that your World's Fair, Tomorrowland, like people are hungry, I think, for that way more than what some. Today's version of the future, 100 years from now, because what is that like? What if I was saying,
you don't
what
want-
does pop culture think the future looks like 100 years from now?
You don't want next generation Jetsons. You want original series Jetsons, but just set.
Yeah, just shift the timeline, shift the date a little bit, and call it 100 years. But I want cities in the sky, right? Don't show me the ground, right? If you're gonna have a Jetsons, it's got to be Cloud City type environments and flying cars.
Well, Robert Zemeckis is producing it, so that's good.
Right.
He can do very little wrong. The guy behind Back to the Future. So
Absolutely, right? So he already has tapped into that. What is the fake version of the future look like?
But have you seen a cartoon to live action movie show, whatever it is, that you've gone, that's really
what's
good.
an example of a cartoon to live action show?
Well, they've done
Scooby-Doo?
Flintstones, they've done Scooby-Doo, they've done, or even games, when they do the Warcraft or the, any of those.
Any animated to live action?
Yeah. Is there
There's
any that
got to
you
be. There absolutely, there must be one. Oh, I really enjoyed Speed Racer.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And that's right in that aesthetic in that era, too.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think that was one of the very first, like, sort of super. They actually had a term for it. The like hyper realistic, or I forget what they coined some term during the filming of that, where it was just like, basically taking comic book or anime, like, and bringing it to life in that way, because we finally had enough technology of like, I can then do these impressive visuals.
It's an interesting point. That movie is from an editing standpoint and from a compositing standpoint, just a masterwork.
Absolutely.
Even if like the script isn't the best thing in the world and it didn't win any Oscars.
It embraces
Visually.
the green screen.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Backgrounds, which worked with that, with the framing of the cell on the TV show, and even though the characters weren't as caricatured, like physically as a cartoon character, they embodied the way the dialogue, the way it was delivered, the sound mixing, all of that was. It felt like, a Speed Racer.
Yeah.
And the game, it's basically Mario Kart. I guess what's that PC game with the racing game that people do the crazy stunts in?
Rocket League.
No, not Rocket League. The one that's like
Trackmania?
Trackmania.
Oh.
It was basically Trackmania,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But on the big screen and with the technical prowess of the
Well,
Wachowskis.
hopefully they can kind of capture that and the original Jetsons feel, because it was fun. I mean, it's a fun show.
I like the Jetsons.
Yeah. What's the story about a U.S. Space Corps?
So, apparently, the House of Representatives has included in their budget proposal for the U.S. military a new Space Corps. Yes. So
What does that mean?
It means you can be a space marine. Well, not you. You're
yeah.
you're probably
Everybody
exempt.
but you.
But people younger, below a certain age, probably in the future, should the Senate and everyone else approve, there will be a Space Corps arm of the Air Force. So it would be managed by the Secretary of the Air Force, but it would be a completely new division of the military, much like the Marines are managed by the Navy, but there's a completely different wing of the armed forces. Space Corps, dude.
What would they be? What would they be in charge of?
They would be in charge of managing space,
Managing
as a military venue.
So instead of the Air Force aim higher, it's like aim even higher.
right to a point where high is relative.
Yeah.
There is no up and down. Do you think this is more about drones and maybe a Space Corps
Drones.
operating?
No, space, dude.
Right, but operating robots in space rather than actually being in space. Like the people who are part of the
Yes.
U.S. Space Corps are going to be the engineers and the operators.
I mean, Elon Musk talks about even the mission to Mars won't have a pilot.
Right.
Like it's all unmanned.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
Well,
you're
it
not
could be
going to.
manned, but it's just not controlled by man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, and you're not going to get NASA to have an operator running the war drones of space. So I guess you need to have someone in the military do it. Yeah. All right. And then any of you watch movies this weekend? Is July 4th a big movie watching holiday? I know like Christmas is, and I traditionally have not.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. It was
No.
a camping weekend.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen anything since Cars 3. You
Yesterday, I did. Yeah. So I came back. I was away on the weekend, and I was in Las Vegas hanging out with some buddies, and came back. And on Tuesday, July 4th, watched Baby Driver
I can't wait to see this.
in a
It
packed
looks
theater.
good. It looks good.
Packed theater.
Now, the Rotten Tomatoes have fallen from 100%.
What is that?
Well, it used to be 100% Rotten Tomato. It's got to be in the 90s now, but
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm being sarcastic, that it's still supposed to be a great movie.
near perfect
Yeah,
movie.
it's near perfect.
Yeah, 97%. It is a 97% film. It is near perfect. I think I'll probably Adam's and I are probably gonna talk about it on Still Entitled, but
Yeah.
this is probably the best way I can describe it for people who have no idea. It's Edgar Wright. It's
Responsible for what?
he did a Spaced TV show, a British TV show, but most people might be most familiar with Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, probably the Cornetto trilogy. World's End was his last movie, I want to say. Wow, it was a long time ago. But he was also heavily involved in the pre-production and was the director of Ant-Man before Peyton Reed came over and took that over because they had creative differences between him and Marvel. So this is his first independent film. Sony financed it.
Is it
TriStar
really?
financed it. First movie since working in the big studio to do Ant-Man.
He did Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yes,
too, right?
Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess people probably in the States probably know him best for Scott Pilgrim. And this is a very different movie. It's not like Scott Pilgrim at all. Music is a big part of it, but it's probably the movie most people thought they were going into the theater to watch when they bought a ticket for Drive.
Oh, that's not me. I didn't buy that ticket.
Oh, you didn't buy? So I watched Drive with a bunch of friends, and the trailer for Drive said one thing, and what you got was this art film instead, right? And this is, I think, that movie that people wanted to see when they saw the trailer for Drive.
A movie about
About driving and heists.
I mean,
and
the trailers are
very
the
stylish.
best I've seen this year, maybe.
It almost is. I think it makes better use of a soundtrack than Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, because the kid, baby, ostensibly wears earbuds
Yeah.
constantly, right?
Yes.
In order to drone out, I gather from the trailer, sounds that he doesn't want to hear.
Sure. Yes. I don't want to go. I don't want to go
It's
too much
in the
plot.
trailer.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I don't. Yes. Yes.
don't spoil
I
it.
don't want to spoil it for you. I don't want to spoil it for you, Jeremy.
Okay,
Go
okay.
into it with no.
But is that where the soundtrack
Preconceptions.
comes from? Is it what he's hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's not. The soundtrack is always in the world. There are very few moments that music is playing with. But
is he using
the
Tidal?
songs. No, because he's listening on an iPod.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And it's locally. He bought those CDs or found iPods with music already on them. But a very deliberate soundtrack, and I think makes better use of pop music. I think than even Guardians of the Galaxy,
And
which
the,
is
and,
great.
the, and the cast is impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
like the number
Kevin
of big
Spacey.
names.
Kevin Spacey, John Hamm, Jamie Foxx. The lead character is played by Ansel Elgort.
He's kind of a newcomer, isn't he?
Yeah, he did the movie Fault in Our Stars. I want to say.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And the female lead is the girl who played Cinderella. I want to say in the Disney film.
All right. I'll see it.
But it's funny. It's beautiful. It's Edgar Wright's films. If you've seen Scott Pilgrim and like Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, his editing is
editing is amazing.
incredible. Meticulous editing with so much additional covered shots and that work to his style. And this movie really exemplifies that. The camera work is amazing.
5 hours ago, Screen Rant reported that he thinks he'll do a sequel.
Wow,
So there you go.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my movie recommendation. Again, we'll dive deeper once because it kind of came out of nowhere. People should really watch it in theaters. But okay, let's go to tech news.
Oh, all right. Let's hit that button and unmute first. The day we did our podcast last week, we received something called the Echo Show.
That's right. This is Amazon's new Echo, and sure, I have his show, but everyone in the room at the time ordered a show. Jeremy and I both got ours, and the very first thing getting home that night was
Jeremy got two, didn't you?
I did.
You got the 2-pack.
Well, you get a deal. You got a significant deal if you get two, and I figured, part of the allure of this is being able to call another Echo Show.
Are you going to
Yeah.
gift it, or are you having two in one house?
Well, the original plan was to put one in the kitchen and one in the office.
So you can call the kitchen from
so
the
I can
office.
Call the kitchen.
That
Sometimes you just
this
want
really
to.
truly is the Jetsons' future.
Sometimes you just want to experience technology. But we'll get into whether or not
Use a
that
series
will
of
happen.
mirrors would also work.
What is your first impression of the Echo Show?
Well, you and I talked about this. It's so different design-wise from the Echo and Echo Dot. So, Zach, do you have an Echo?
I'm familiar. Yes.
So you might have some input on this in terms of like the industrial design, because
Sure.
the Echo and the Dot are cylinders.
Yeah. Which for the microphone array
exactly.
and speaker array both.
It worked
works
wonderfully.
Great.
And not only from that technological standpoint, but also from then the design decision of where you can put it and
Right.
where it fits in your
In the
household.
center of a room
Exactly.
as opposed to a corner.
Yeah, as opposed to having it against a wall. The show is completely different because it has a front, and so it needs to go up against a wall. And you still need to find power there, but it has a screen. And then we last week talked about how the early reports were the screen quality was not that great because it's 1024 by 600. It's fine. The screen is totally fine. You're not using it as close to you as you would a phone or a tablet. So in terms of what your eyes can resolve, it is completely sufficient. And the responsiveness of the capacitive touchscreen is great. They didn't cheap out on that regard. But ergonomically, it is a different beast. And because the screen is always on, you're more aware of it as a device.
It's no longer ambient.
It is absolutely no. It demands engagement,
Right.
Not just that you like with the Echo and a lot of these other devices like Google Home. You can do what the idea is that you do whatever you're doing, and you're not even you don't need to look at it. You just say the thing you want to say and have it come back to you.
Right.
Because of the screen, because of so much of the appeal of the show, demanding that you have that visual feedback, it changes your interaction model to it. You have to be way more deliberate and more cognizant of it being there, let alone knowing that it has a camera. Not only does it have the mics picking up everything around and processing it, in real time.
Well,
but also the camera.
And I think that sort of use case is what made the Echo really interesting, which is it basically just became part of your home as opposed to
the original
Echo.
Yeah.
The countertop tablet or just computer. I mean, people have been doing that for years and years. I used to have an Audrey back in the,
Oh, you were the one.
I was the one.
Oh, 3Com Audrey. This is the fulfillment of that.
It really is. I mean, that's and I don't know that the display is much better, but it's. I think it just solves a different problem, and it didn't seem compelling to me. I mean, I like the, it's an appliance that is your video conferencing thing, and I like that as I could send this to a relative and then they don't have to do anything. They plug it in and it just works, as opposed to Skype or FaceTime or whatnot.
I think that's probably the best use case for it.
Absolutely.
Is that you could send it maybe to an elderly relative who you need to be able to conference in on without their interacting with the device.
But they've had these since the late 90s. Like, they had a video phone that you could buy as soon as you had enough bandwidth that lets you do basic...
Yeah. Didn't Oracle sell an attachment for your TV that was essentially this?
Probably. I know they had the web TV. They had a bunch of these back in the day.
But it is hands-off, and I think for that purpose. So we did a quick video call. You told Alexa to call Jeremy, and it popped up. Video quality is fine. It's good. You can stand a couple feet away from it. You can be in the room, but you can also sense the distance there.
But it also doesn't follow you. So if it's not pointed at you,
right,
it's just looking at the ceiling or looking at the wall.
Not only does the camera doesn't follow you,
right,
but the microphone array doesn't exactly follow you well. So you know positionally where the person, that they're not going to be. They're not right at the screen,
right?
And you can hear them. It's distant, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity there. I don't know if the technology is ready for the microphone array to follow you as you're walking, so it sounds exactly.
Well, you're
the
always
same.
going to get that, just that ambient noise of being in a large room.
Yeah.
Unless you're wearing a microphone or can cancel out a lot of that, that's a big challenge.
That's what the Echo hears,
right?
And I think that it's been kind of magic that it understands us from that distance for the voice interactions.
Yeah.
Right.
But now
but for a voice call,
revealed that it's not that great.
No.
You don't ever hear the Echo like what the normal Echo hears.
Right. Yeah. So when you hear it, it's like I expected this magic, perfect clarity.
Yeah.
But no, it just sounds like a phone is at the table and you're doing a conference call.
Right.
So the Echo show lasted about 1 day in our kitchen.
Oh.
At which point it was vetoed by my wife. Rightly so, and I agreed with her because she made a good point, which is that it now demands this attention. Mm-hmm. Now that it has this screen, now everyone in the family just wanted to watch things on it rather than just look at each other and interact with maybe a game of Jeopardy or looking up things in Wikipedia.
Yeah,
and it's also constantly trying to gift you information that you're not
passive
asking
information,
for.
like a widget bar, like a widget of not only the clock, because you could use it as a clock has a time rate.
I wish it only had the clock, but it's always suggesting new things to say to it.
Well, this is that social norm that we're sort of shifting of for the longest time, having a device on a table during dinner would be just such a faux pas. And now it's okay to sort of have that, though it still feels weird, which is why you've got the watch and you've got these other kind of things that are a little less annoying. But this really breaks that. I mean, it's a different social interaction.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be better if Amazon really leaned into the personal assistant, the anthropomorphizing design, like what the Jibo promised? If they made it, you don't need to give it eyes, but really made it more of another person in the room.
I think the thing that makes Echo, the original Echo, which maybe the non-visual Echo, work is it basically means your house is that person.
Right. It's all around you.
It's all around you.
It's
right. And because it doesn't require that focus, it doesn't take away from the personal interactions that you have around you. And that's, I think, the thing that is really magical, where having that thing that you have to look at or want to look at.
And I think at this age, because we've lived with phones and tablets, the closest analog when we have this is a tablet. I mean, it's basically using one of these Kindle Fire screens. So I imagine with kids using it, they want to touch it and use it like a tablet or another like a plugged-in tablet essentially, and it doesn't have all those functions. There's no app menu. You can't launch it. So also it feels limiting in that sense.
Right.
Like because it demands attention, but it's also not giving me enough to do with it at time. Like I found it frustrating to watch movies on it because there was no way to scroll through movies and say,
Oh, really?
play this show. You can say, show me movies, and it would have like your limited carousel of movies that would pop up, but it didn't. At that point, I would rather just bring out a tablet, launch.
Yeah,
you know,
a tablet
Amazon
on
Video.
a stand is going to give you almost everything that this does.
Exactly.
I feel like it's not misguided. Like I do feel like the Echo could use a screen sometimes. Like if you ask it a certain question, it should be able to present you something visual. Or even if you ask it how much timer's left on the timer.
And if you listen to our old podcast, we talked about this, how the display, there's information you can project on that you can display that not only do you is it more useful information,
Right.
like for example maps and directions, but our brains process it that much quicker, and so there's no room for misinterpretation.
Sure.
My fear is that this now they embrace the touch in a way that I feel like should not even be a feature. Like I don't even think you should ever touch the screen. I like that I'm talking to Echo and that the relationship is voice entirely. I think the visuals should augment that.
That's why I want to I want it to be projected.
Yeah.
I want that same cylinder with a Pico projector that just throws the information up on a wall when it's
Right.
answering you.
Exactly.
It's not a visual thing
Or-
on all the time, but it can. Maybe you have a space on the wall, and maybe it's directional, right? And then it throws up the time, throws up the response, throws up a map, throws up your calendar, throws up a phone number you need to dial.
With the laser projectors, they don't even need to focus. Yeah, they can do that.
Yeah, it sort of breaks that whole minimal UI that is so compelling and so nice. You know, what you're talking about is actually limiting a lot of these things so that it is more clean. And you know, I think if somebody came through and just sort of took a machete to it and took out a lot of the stuff that you're complaining about, I think it would be really nice. I mean, and whether it's projected or not, I mean, the projection thing I think still has the same problem. I mean, maybe it's just because it's larger. But
what I'm saying is that it would only be on when it responded to you. So it's not an always on projector.
sure.
That it's the image, the imagery, the benefit of the show having something visual only affects the way you use it and your
Right. experience
with it when it's responding to you.
But then the question is, you know, when a light turns on in the room, you're like, what? Like it's almost a jarring thing. You'd have to figure out a way of doing it sort of is it, you know, a little softer.
I want the screen to only come on when it's necessary, yes, but I also want it to be the visual equivalent of the cylindrical, experience.
Right.
So I want to be able to access that screen from any direction.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you want the embedded screen in everywhere in your house, but also it being passive.
Yeah.
You want it to be on the microwave door, in your bathroom mirror, but not always on, but only popping up when you talk about that. That's what you want.
Sure. Yeah, I guess.
So
And that
it's
is the
the
vision.
Jetsons. It's the Jetsons environment. I mean,
it's
it's
the
basically
Jetsons. Right. And I think there's lots to say about the appeal of that and the embedded nature of that. And it's when you're buying one device with audio, it's easier to get away with. But with video, with anything visual, it's a tougher problem.
Until we're wearing our own displays. I mean, that's kind of where it's at some point, the way you get there is not by augmenting everything around you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just carrying a, semi-transparent AR display with you.
That's right. Or having information pop up in your car and everywhere you're at. So the other thing that happened since we recorded last, big notification, we have confirmation that Tesla Model 3s
exists.
It not only will exist, it's coming a lot sooner than I think any of us anticipated.
Yeah.
The original announcement was...
Well, now why is that? Because they did promise.
They promised end of 2017.
I thought they promised July.
Oh, I guess they promised July, and then we all expected mass production in 2018 or
Yes.
2019.
Yes. Right.
And they've sold at this point, I think their official numbers were as of January 400,000
Pre-orders.
So by July now, it's got to be like in the 500,000 or 600,000
with 1,000 down. Is that what the pre-order?
$1,000 down.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the news stories all said like, oh well, this production is now being released and it's happening. But they're talking about 30 cars.
Yeah, so the 30 cars don't mean anything. This is a bare minimum.
That's for the party. That is, it's a release party.
Right.
Like they're getting 30.
I mean, and I look at those as betas, right? Because, and Tesla has this kind of model, this development model of we're just going to kind of push out features and vehicles in this case out to the public to sort of let them test it. And the same thing with, self-driving. Like, I mean, they don't have this schedule of we perfect something and then release it out. We can they almost treat it like software, which is we put out a beta and then may put some patches out there. And I think that's kind of how they're treating this.
And I think that's smart. I think it's not only smart to do that, even if they could make 10,000 cars a week in July, they shouldn't.
Because there's going to be something wrong.
Absolutely. And that's fascinating that in the car business, when cars are released and announced, like people don't follow development unless it's a sports car or in very limited quantities. When the new Corolla comes out, it just works, right? When the new Honda Accord comes out, like yes, it's been in development for years, but no one's following that. And they do whenever the design refreshes out, it's just expected.
There's no
to
front
work.
page news story,
and there's no beta period, right? No one's going to be expected to buy the beta of this new of any car, even if it's a luxury car. But what's also interesting in whether it's artificial because of the beta or because of manufacturing is the curve for production, which Elon Musk tweeted out. So 30 cars in July, then 100 cars in August, so tripling up in August, then 1,500 in September. So that, I think, that's got to be, just in terms of confidence, in terms of the software, the experience. 100 cars you can manage, and it's not out of control if there's something bad.
Right.
Once it's 1,500 in September, that's like the reviewers are going to get their cars.
But I'm going to guess that number can be throttled up and down depending on the first 30.
Yep,
right.
exactly.
Those are just kind of like, I would say, estimates at this point. I mean,
right, absolutely. But that's their trajectory that they anticipate based on problem solving and manufacturing, getting accustomed to manufacturing support. And then, but really, the number that really matters is at scale. So at scale, it's by end of the year, 10,000 cars a week, and I feel like that is.
Is that what they said?
10,000 a week in December, 20,000 in December total.
Yeah.
But they said, they would make as many as 10,000 Model 3s per week by December.
That's amazing.
And that is still less than previous estimates.
It's like one car a second. That's crazy.
Is that really? Someone do the math real quick. 10,000
Well, I think you may be off.
Am I off by that?
By order of magnitude, maybe.
All right.
There's a lot of seconds in a day. I think there's like...
Go ahead. Keep talking.
And then... they are hoping, based on this scale, that first half of next year, they would have 50,000 cars out. Wait, that's no way. The math doesn't work out there.
No, it's by minute. It was a minute. You're right.
A car a minute
it's
in
like a car a
December,
minute.
which is that's I mean, they
Still
have
a lot of
They have
cars.
the biggest factory in the world or in the U.S.
Working
on this, right, in terms of square footage. So this is going to make or break the company, the success of this car. One, it's fulfilling the pre-order promise, 500,000 cars by some time, maybe end of next year, maybe not. But once they fulfill those pre-orders, and that demand only either sharply increases or sharply decreases by end of this year.
What do you mean, that demand? They got a long way to go before they hit 400,000.
Right, but if they're at December and 20,000 cars are out and reviews are out, and it is the best thing ever in cars, anyone who's been on the fence is going to want to jump in. And that number, I think that pre-order number jumps up from 400, from 500, whatever it is, to significantly higher. And once they fulfill that, it's going to change the landscape of cars. Well, if you're talking about 500,000 cars, which I know in the grand scheme of how many cars are on the road today is not that many, but it's significant enough because how many Model S's have they shipped?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's no longer uncommon for you to see a Model S.
Well,
on the
but
road.
we're in a weird bubble here too.
True.
I think,
even traveling around the world, I've seen Model S's.
Sure, you'll see them, but in the Bay Area, it's kind of a little silly.
Yes.
Yeah.
According to Wikipedia, they have sold 150,000 Model S's as of last November.
So if they triple that, right? Quadruple that, 4 times, and even let's say the landscape of the Bay Area, like if we're 5 years ahead of whatever scale we're seeing, the landscape of the freeways of the Bay Area will significantly change once they fulfill these 500,000 car orders. And all these cars, not only will they look the landscape, the visual landscape, but how the cars are changing the way people drive, because these are all autopilot cars.
Yeah.
And that means Bay Area, and that's measurable. That's going to be significant enough to know whether traffic patterns are going to change, commutes are going to change.
Well, parking.
And parking, and also the infrastructure for charging is going to change. Because you're talking about 150,000. I don't know if anyone owns a model. I mean, you own the EV, but you charge at home. So, like, is the infrastructure for EVs right now sufficient, even for the EVs on the road today? Multiply that by almost an order of magnitude. That's going to be significant.
The infrastructure for Teslas is far superior to every other car.
And is it impacted right now? Is it difficult for Model S and Model X owners to find superchargers? Or, I mean,
well, most people that I know charge at home that have them.
Right, but even talking to our friend Christian, who owns a Model X, he said he can feel it. Like, he had a first Model S, but he can feel like there is now finally a wait in line. Like, previously, you would drive into one of these malls in the South Bay and have no wait for these superchargers.
Tesla started adding penalties if you leave your car there after it's finished charging.
Exactly.
Right.
And talk about commutes down to LA, right? Like, those are already impacted. Like the hot spots where people are setting up new restaurants because they know where the wealthy are parking their Model S's for charging.
Though I have to say, like, parking in the city, oftentimes I'll take a EV spot because I've got a Chevy Volt that charges, and I'll just charge up just because it's like, oh look, front row parking, and charge up there. As I pay the 50 cents and I get a front row spot because those are what's available. I'm actually been shocked at the availability of charging public spaces. Like, I think just a lot of people just charge at home because that's the most convenient. And if you've got 200 plus miles of range, you don't typically have to charge while you're out and about.
Well, you talked about that, Jeremy. One of the best things wasn't the cost savings of electricity, but the mental convenience of changing your driving workflow where you never have to stop at the gas station.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously, we have 2 cars, and my wife still has to refuel, and it's just a matter of taking that into consideration when you actually travel. But the other side is you have a Volt which can travel. Like, I actually am limited by this radius, as all EVs are, until that there's this better infrastructure.
Right.
Like, that's the other side of the coin, is there isn't the distance infrastructure that is anywhere near as flexible as the gas infrastructure.
And I don't anticipate battery technology changing in the next 3 years when they're supposed to deliver these 500,000 cars.
No, it's not.
It's what they're shipping at the end of this year is what those people are going to get.
I mean, you're going to get an incremental change over the next 3 years, but nothing that's going to change. It's not going to go from 200 to 500.
So will that change the landscape of commuting in the Bay, at least in these urban areas?
I don't think it does now. I mean, the majority of people don't drive 200 miles. I mean, that's what it really boils down to. I mean, the reason I got the Volt instead of waiting for a Bolt or even the Tesla was because I every once in a while I will have to drive down the peninsula and make 4 or 5 stops, and that 200 miles was just barely pushing it where I would be stressed. And so that's why I got the hybrid Volt. And I get the best in some ways of both, because most days I drive less than 50 miles a day, and I think most people do.
The tech limitation already informed the purchase decision. It's not going to be the other way around, where people want the newest car and then change their behavior.
Exactly. I think the behavior is already there.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for 3 years from now what that landscape is going to look like.
Exactly.
Driving down the 101 or driving down 280 when right now you'll spot a handful, half dozen Model S's and Model X's when it's 30, 40 Model 3s all
on autopilot.
A row of autopilot cars. Yeah. That's nuts. I mean, that's the self-driving. It's as close to the self-driving car future as we can all visualize. And then you project out to when they're going to have their self-driving semis. Then you're getting to the movie Logan, and I mean I think that turnover is going to be much faster.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Because anything that's long haul. It's so much easier, and especially if they start doing dedicated lanes, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, I think, in the shorter term than what we actually think is going to, pan out.
Do you know when remember last year when they announced the Model 3? Elon said that he was surprised by the amount of positive feedback. I mean, he wasn't surprised there was positive feedback.
But just by
he
the
was
pure
taken
amount.
aback by how much there was, and he didn't expect that level until phase 2 of the reveal.
Yeah, and now phase 2 and 3 are both out, right?
Is that right?
What? Phase 2 was autopilot, I want to say.
Oh, that everyone would be autopilot equipped?
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering what that was, if that had happened yet, or if that was part of this month's celebrations.
It's going to be interesting. And I think other car companies are getting there. They're catching up. And one of the ways they're catching up is, of course, moving to all electric.
It's an easy one to move to.
Yep. And so Volvo says by 2019, all of its new car models will be either electric or hybrid.
I think this is kind of a big deal.
It's a big car company. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
And there's trusted...
I don't think any other car company has said this. Every single new car would have an electric component.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right there. I don't know when they say hybrid, like to what degree of hybrid.
Right.
Right. Like is it going to be like that, like the BMW i3, right? Or is it more like
you mean with the little...
the Volt?
Right.
Right. Like how is it going to be closer to an EV with a backup, or is it really going to be?
Is it series or parallel hybrid? I mean, that's the big one.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Toyota Prius or
Yeah.
a Chevy Volt.
Yeah. I think
very
it's closer
different.
to Prius.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still good. I mean, you still basically the end result is you get the ability to plug in if it's a plug-in hybrid, and you get range extension and basically really good gas mileage. And but the Prius, it doesn't have a lot of the acceleration because you're still relying on that gas motor, to actually propel you, as opposed to you getting the acceleration of a pure electric tied to the drivetrain. So
I don't know if people are looking for the torque though. They're looking for range. Well, I mean,
people that enjoy driving. I mean, that's the first thing when somebody drives an electric car that hasn't ever driven an electric car. They're like, "Holy moly! Like this feels like a sports car," because the second I touch that gas pedal, I just take off.
But there's no electrical engineering reason why the Prius can't have better pickup. They could put all of that electric power into some better gear ratio that gives you that torque, that gives you the...
They made that design decision.
Yeah, they made that decision.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the market chooses also. I mean, and that's an interesting thing. Like, not all EVs are and hybrids are created equal, and there will be this distinction going forward. And it's up to the marketing for companies like Toyota and Volvo to say you're going to get the hybrid with the best range, or you're going to get the hybrid that's going to be the best pickup.
But really, that should just be a button on your console that you just go from sport mode to econo mode.
Right. But that's not how marketing works.
I know.
And they're going to release 5 new cars, all of which will, have an electric component.
Yeah.
Good for them.
It's tough to anyone who's buying a car next 2 years, I think.
Yeah, what do you do?
What exactly, right?
Well, but that's going to be for a while. I mean, the electric charging infrastructure is not going to be finished in 3 years.
Buy a Prius, I guess.
I mean,
it's a perfectly safe bet
for the Volt or for a hybrid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the argument, is you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
That's the transition car.
Right.
Yeah. Let's switch over to some iPhone rumors. We talked a little about this last week. The latest batch. We were getting closer to September than ever. We're closer today than yesterday. But it's the year has gone by really quickly.
What happens then? A new iPhone?
Probably a new iPhone.
That hasn't been announced yet.
Not, of course, and probably a big upgrade because last year's iPhone was not such a big upgrade. And so all the rumors from the case manufacturers to any all these leak photos, everything's talking about how it's going to be this edge-to-edge screen.
OLED
it's going to be the crazy, like they're introducing, as opposed to just one new technology, maybe 3 or 4 new technologies and a new design.
Yeah.
And maybe more expensive. And something might go away. If they're talking about potentially it being a full screen and a digital home button on the screen, what might go away is Touch ID.
Yeah. They talked about the possibility of actually embedding it into the screen,
which I think is much less likely than just putting a Touch ID on the back of the phone.
Yes, they talked about that.
As many phone companies already do with a fingerprint sensor.
Exactly. Right.
Why would you, from a design standpoint, like having an extra sensor behind the phone where the battery, is that more difficult than having a new? No, right?
Not at all.
Right. And I think it's a bigger challenge to have some type of sensor underneath
Oh,
an
oh,
OLED
absolutely.
underneath an LCD.
Absolutely, because you're having to deal with all the electronics and doing something that's semi-transparent and all of that. Yeah, I think, and Apple's really good at basically saying, "Oh, look, this design works. Let's make it, incrementally better, and then incorporate it into our product." I mean, that is kind of the Apple MO.
So the rumor now is that they may get rid of Touch ID completely, and this is we're not talking about the other. This goes hand in hand with the rumor that they're going to release a flagship, super high end, maybe $1,000, maybe even more iPhone that would have a new name, and it would use face scanning.
People have supposed that this might be a possibility, but this has now been upheld by some leaked photos or something. Is that the idea?
I don't know if leaked photos, but analysts are now saying it's the
Okay.
case. Right.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's weird because they have invested so much in Touch ID. Like they put it in the MacBook now, and the iPads, and everything has it, and they have their whole security mythos tied to it. So
And you can't change the name.
People kind of trust it.
Once you use face recognition, you can't call it Touch ID anymore.
Right.
And
Unless you press it up against your face.
Exactly, right? Unless it was the perfect ID, or they would have called it something different than Touch ID.
Yeah.
But Touch ID, I think, has changed the way people not only have thought about unlocking their phone, but basic baseline security on the phone, on their mobile device, which has allowed for transactions.
Right.
Touch ID is what makes wireless transactions in the Apple ecosystem work. And it's why I don't take my credit card out of my phone. It's how I could travel in Europe and not have to worry about, and because everywhere accepts these wireless payments.
I think there's a perception of, your fingerprint is secure. I mean, that's like, there's something that's very, special about that. All the movies back in the 80s, you put your hand on the touchpad next to the door and that's what opens the door. So that is kind of ingrained in our psyche of like, that's secure. Where your face, I don't know that that's going to be an easy sales pitch to say like.
Not only is it not an easy sales pitch, it's been proven. We've had years of bad facial recognition on laptops. It's better today. Like Microsoft, the Windows Hello stuff, I think works well. But the perception that it's a camera that you can fool by putting a photo in front of it, which has happened. And
the 3D stuff, the real sense helps. But again, I'm sure there's going to be a way of getting around that. And again, I think it's all about perception and marketing. And
also ergonomics. Like when I'm taking my phone out of my pocket and paying with a contactless payment, and I'm not looking at my phone, it essentially is the credit card. I'm just holding the device as I would a credit card or a phone, and it unlocks and it pays.
You don't have to do this.
I don't have to lift it up.
So if they're smart, they would keep the Touch ID on there for a transition until they got to a point where face is kind of recognized as as secure.
And there's so many more variables.
Yeah.
When you're talking about what a Touch ID sensor is, it's really just a camera sensor that's hidden. It's some type of visual sensor that's looking at the pattern on your fingerprint and using their algorithms to unlock the phone. But it's the direct contact, so you're not introducing variables like lighting and distance and angles. With the face, so much more difficult.
Yeah. So I mean, part of it is the technology already exists really to do that. Like they've got a front-facing camera. They could do some form of that now. But I think it really is going to come down to marketing and what people accept. I'm hoping they keep the touch sensor on the back. And this is just kind of an extra thing. It sort of plays into a lot of the other kind of announcements as far as like ARKit and some of these other things where it's like, okay, they're clearly they've got expertise in the
computer vision
and interpreting the real world, and so they've got that baseline. Clearly, they're going to keep playing with that. I mean, that's clearly the direction that they're going.
And also, as good as computer vision gets and sensor fusion, like the ideal, theoretically, I think the ideal system would be a system where you don't even think about it. That through a combination of your finger or eye sensing or face sensing and maybe some whatever a fob key or something, that if you're by your phone and you're holding up to the payment thing, or you're by it, it will know it's you and you can pay for the thing. But with the Touch ID, there's an intentionality there that is both ergonomically comfortable,
right?
Because it fits in the way you hold your device, and also you can give it intentionality. You're never going to make a mistake and pay for something you didn't intend to pay for.
This might be they're relying on the watch more than they have with the current generation. Anyone with a watch basically has equal amount of convenience. They double tap and they hold the right up to the thing.
I never do that.
Why not? You forget to?
I don't know. Like behaviorally, the intentionality of swiping something, even if it's my phone, and swiping it over a thing to say I make the payment, is much it's easier to do than double tapping the watch and then pressing a watch up. It's
So
just-
actually, the thing that you said as far as intentionality, I mean, you can't turn your face off, but you can choose to touch or not.
exactly.
And even though if your thumb can be close to that, or even if you just do a quick tap, like you know that that's not a scan. Like it's almost like a signature. Like I am intentionally doing this.
Yes.
Right.
And that facial recognition. How do you? What's the gesture to say?
Double blink, right?
Yeah, like we don't have an acceptable gesture, so that's going to be another thing to solve if that's really the direction they're going.
Right. And I mean, you could have combined it with voice, right? With face. Like there's such a fusion.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that you can perfect, but with the finger, it really our idea that the fingerprint is the signature is so ingrained in culture that I think it's going to be tough to move away from that.
It's just a rumor at this point. But if it's true, it's all in service of a bigger screen on the face of the iPhone. Is that something that you guys would really enjoy?
I still use a 5S.
Okay, so you're...
I do.
Yeah.
And I have, I'm a little ashamed to even say that in this room, but
No.
I continually do because I haven't found something compelling to either grow the screen or the features that I really use. I mean, it works.
And people said the 5S is the best phone they've made because of the form factor.
It's ideal.
And that's the rumor is that because of the new form factor of this whatever iPhone Pro or whatever they're going to call it, it's going to be smaller than the current phone, but have a bigger screen.
Right, which I wouldn't turn down.
I feel like this screen expansion, though, is just a same problem as the miniaturization of the phone, where it's gotten to a point where it's good enough.
Yeah.
I don't need you to start sacrificing features in order to make it even.
And at some point, when you're increasing pixel density too much, increasing pixel real estate, and making the screen too big from a UI perspective, you're designing things completely differently, and you're making full web pages easier to read, and you can put more icons on the screen.
But it's another design problem that somebody has to tackle.
And most people, I think, love the 5 and the 5S and that form factor because it was the perfection of that list-based scrolling, one-finger scroll. If you think of a Twitter feed, right? I hate Twitter feeds on big Android phones because they're just...
It's not a single-handed experience.
No, it's not. And so much wasted space. It's not a list. And so the way we consume not only Twitter data and social media data information now, when you think of like these feeds, but also web pages now, they're made these single columns.
Yep.
Single column really works for a mobile design. That's why it's a rectangle. That's why it's tall rectangles and not squares in our hands. Yeah. But if the iPhone does come out with a Touch ID sensor underneath an OLED screen or an LCD screen, which I think would be a breakthrough that we have not seen before in any other device. It would be truly a breakthrough. I would love to see it taken apart and broken down, and probably not very repairable either. And repairability is a topic that's popping up in Europe. Europe apparently wants repairability ratings in their hardware, much like iFixit scores. That's never going to happen in the U.S. We're even fighting for the right to repair our devices in the U.S.
Who's been fighting? I mean, iFixit certainly is waging that war, but is there any government body that has...
There are legislators.
Are there?
Yeah, politicians who are fighting for rights to repair.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's not a massive movement, but there are people definitely championing for it. Well, the European Parliament they've approved recommendations for companies to make devices easier to repair by having scores on their devices. This is fascinating.
I love it.
Absolutely. And there's got to be a whole advertising campaign, marketing campaign, understanding for what it means. It's even if it means that matching a number with like a approved repairing system, like a third party. Like when like right now, if you buy a phone, you kind of understand that if the screen breaks, you can take it to a third-party repair agent, and they can repair it cheaper than the retailer or the manufacturer, right? Even if it's a score rating that matches that, and so that people have an understanding of like, okay, if I buy an 8-rated product versus a 4-rated product, then I know that I can afford breaking this and taking it to a third-party repair station. That's enough. Like, I don't think it's about people repairing the phones themselves, but it's about what does it mean to them when they break their phone.
Well, it's a hint on, how long I'm going to get to use this. So, some things you just, you know after a couple of years you're going to replace. But if this was on things like appliances, I don't know how many times I've had to do something with our dishwasher, whether it's a pump or a filter or a heater or, it's just this constant sort of, it's a big mechanical system that gets rusty and weird and a lot of stress under, and if I had this is a super easy to repair versus this is a completely, unrepairable device, absolutely. I would love that knowledge when I purchased it.
The thing is that this is clearly at odds entirely with the trend towards miniaturization and making smaller, more compact electronics, and that's part of the point.
It is. It's hard to make something.
So the question is that clearly serves the companies. Like making them smaller and harder to repair serves the companies. They get this embedded obsolescence so that things die and they have to people have to buy a new one.
Yeah.
But do people want the miniaturization? Or is that something that, as we were just talking in the last segment, is that something that it's small enough and they can do without?
I think you survey the people and ask how many people now has the sea change happened for removable batteries.
Right.
It used to be upheaval when phones, Android phones especially, didn't have removable batteries, and now it's kind of moved to a point where many people are okay with it.
Well, here's a big one. IP67.
Yeah.
You want something waterproof.
Yeah.
That is in exact odds with being repairable because it usually requires seals and glue.
Yep. And if you ask someone to make that choice, removable battery, replaceable battery, or waterproof, they're going to choose waterproof most of the time.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's more of a marketing challenge than anything.
You bring up a good point with appliances. I haven't bought like a new dishwasher or a washer dryer, in almost a decade now. Are those moving toward proprietary repairability and less repairability? Because appliances you've always had this understanding that you could take apart an appliance and fix it yourself.
Kind of. I mean, I think what they're doing is they're going with cheaper and cheaper manufacturing, and it's easier to stamp out a piece of metal and rivet it together in a way that you can't remove than it is to add fasteners and make it accessible to the average Joe.
So you're talking about less about planned obsolescence and just cost cutting.
Just cost cutting, purely cost cutting.
Got it. Yeah, that's disappointing. And that's where a rating would be. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't think anyone 20 years ago could imagine walking into a Sears, if you could find one these days, and finding an appliance and say, not repairable dishwasher. Right? That culturally, that just is not something that you would understand. But, that's very, very possible.
Well, the problem with that trend, though, is that it works for the first few months. So it passes all the reviews. It gets
absolutely.
It gets a legitimate score.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to wait long enough in order for the bad reviews to come out, and it's too late because everyone's already bought the cheap one.
Right. So I know my in-laws, they've redone their kitchen and bought all new appliances. And, they asked the repair person, like, when they came out to fix their refrigerator, what would you get? And those are the people that know, right? Yeah. Because they're the ones that are seeing the problems and the things that aren't fixable.
Yeah, it's not the cheap one.
It's usually not the cheap one.
All right. A couple more news stories. This I thought was interesting. I was at the Microsoft event for the Surface Pros, the last couple actually, the Surface Pro 4 and the Surface Studio, and I'm a fan of the Surface line of laptops.
You're on one now.
I'm on the new Surface Pro now, and I'm liking it quite a bit. But a really big event for them, I think, was in 2014 when they announced the Surface Book and also the Surface Pro 4, which I've really liked. But there was a new product that they were rumored to announce at that same event, and it was a Surface Mini, a tablet. And they apparently had it ready, and at the last minute in the last week canceled the device. And I think it was a smart decision. But there are now photos of this Surface tablet.
The tablet that could have been?
Mini tablet that could have been, and its functionality, and I think it was a smart decision for them not to make. So, without going into detail into the specs, you can Google right now. It was an ARM-based tablet, 8-inch tablet, had your limited. It was a 4x3, 1440 by 1080 screen, gig of RAM, ran Windows RT back then. So not even like it was pre-big Windows 10, and it had a kickstand. But it really didn't do anything much different than the Surface Pro, which is a smaller form factor. You guys both use MacBook.
Yeah.
MacBooks, right. So you have MacBooks and iPads, I assume. Do you have?
I also have a PC laptop.
What would you want in a tablet form factor for a PC? if they were to come out and say, let's do a, or is that
I'm a weird use case because I want more I/O, I want more USB ports, I want more, all the things that I use my PC laptop for is connectivity. Like I want to be able to plug in all my devices. I want a built-in USB or a micro SD reader, sort of all of those sorts of things. I don't want to have dongles.
Yeah. And that's actually the weakest point of the Surface Pro is that it only has one USB.
Yes.
And yes, it does have micro SD, but it performs like a laptop, performs just like a great i5 or an i7 on the mobile side, but it's limited in its tablet in terms of its I/O.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one for me is the I/O.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a place for a tablet running because Microsoft, unlike Apple, doesn't have two OSs. They have one OS, and their OS is Windows 10, and Windows 10 I think is totally great, but it's best thought of as a desktop OS that you can occasionally use in the tablet form factor.
So you say that though they have professional, they have home, they have
the new S version.
Yeah. So they in some ways and realistically, I think Apple's coming to a point where iOS and macOS are getting closer and closer together.
But the difference between those versions of Windows 10 isn't fundamental UI. It's just features.
Sure.
And fundamentally, from a UI standpoint, it is a keyboard, mouse, input device,
except in tablet mode.
Right.
So it
with
does
touch,
switch.
that work, but touch is secondary, I think, in Windows. Than the big divide between Windows RT and Windows 8.
Just because of the lineage of how it was produced. I think because it started out as a desktop environment and then went to a tablet OS.
Which is why I think that the best Windows devices are like even the Pro, which is, you can use it like a tablet. You use like a laptop.
Right.
80% of the time, and a tablet 20% of the time.
Right. You watch a movie like you just want to be able to get rid of the keyboard.
Yes, and you can, right? You can do it with the Surface Book. You can do it with the Surface Pro. So a tablet first device on the Windows side, I don't think makes sense, even with the way Windows can be segmented now between Pro, Home, and S.
Agreed.
Yeah. Last week, also after we recorded a podcast, there was some Canon announcements. You guys, what cameras do you shoot with?
Well, I traded in my Canon. I had a Rebel, right? Like the 3/4. Is that what it is? Sensor?
Micro 4/3.
Micro 4/3.
Yeah.
The Canon, the Rebel is always APS-C.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A little bigger than Micro 4/3.
You guys know your stuff. I traded that. I wanted full frame because I needed to shoot some interior shots, and I wanted to get lots of light and get the widest shot possible. Picked up that Sony A7 II.
Nice.
Haven't turned back. Although I'll never grok that UI. It's crazy.
The menu system.
So deep.
Yeah.
But why do you ask?
So Canon, my first full frame camera was the 60. It was the Canon DSLR. It was lighter than their big 5D, which was very popular. And I have since upgraded last year to the 5D4. But the 60 Mark II was just announced, and it's been 4 years, I want to say, since.
60's full frame, isn't it?
It is full frame. It's their cheapest full frame camera.
Yeah.
And this is a $2,000 camera, which is a little cheaper than what they initially launched the 60 at. It fixed all the problems with the 60 had in terms of its autofocus ability and the much bigger sensor. It has a flip out screen, so it's great for shooting selfie photos and selfie video. No 4K. Do you shoot 4K video, Zach?
No, I don't need it, and it takes just too much storage.
Yeah, I polled people on Twitter, and the consensus was that if you are buying a camera to shoot photos with, you don't really think about, and video is nice and handy, and it's going to look great if you have a nice lens, and you can shoot, you can make a great YouTube video with a DSLR, or even a mirrorless camera. But unless your job requires you to do it, or you have the bandwidth,
you're in production.
Yes, unless you're in production, 4K. But if you are in production, it's almost essential now,
right?
Yeah,
and not even if you're publishing. If you're in production, but even if you're not publishing in 4K. Most people shoot in 4K because you can scale down to 1080.
Right.
You can crop and zoom. You can archive it even in 4K if you're going to re-edit later because it's where everything's going.
The fact that this doesn't is actually a little bit weird because they almost get it for free.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't, and my guess is they may have even planned at the hardware level to deal with it, but they may have had some bug or some...
I think it's pure artificial.
You think it's just market, like they just want another
segmentation.
Tier?
I think it's another tier. The 4K on the 5D, the one step up, $1,500 more than this, it's crappy. It's motion JPEGs.
Right.
And also they crop in the sensor. They don't even do the they don't even scale down for you. So it's funky. I think Canon is. People are saying that they've been left behind by the likes of Sony and even Nikon in some regards.
They still don't do mirrorless, do they?
They have a mirrorless. They have an M range mirrorless.
Oh.
And they're those are APS-C. You can use the same lenses, but the Sony cameras are just
Sony's really nice.
so much nicer. And all you lose out of that is the mirror. Now because I'm photo first guy, and I need the mirror. I need the optical viewfinder. I'm happy with my camera. But if I was getting a new camera and I was jumping to my first full frame photo camera today, the 60 would be very, very attractive.
Cool.
Yeah. And then finally, this was announced actually, I think, a little while ago. But our friends at PrinterBot have a new printing system that has what they call an infinite Z axis.
Yeah. Have you seen
printer belt?
Have you seen a video of this thing in action?
No,
Have you,
haven't.
Zach?
No.
It's fun. So the printer head, it's on a weird axis. So you've got a belt that is your bed, and the printer head does not come down perpendicular to it. It comes
Typically the Z axis.
exactly. It comes down at almost like a 45-degree angle, and you say, well, how does that work? So there's some new math involved in making it print, but you've got your standard, x-axis, so it can go left and right. You've got the belt that can pull away from the head.
So the belt moves in both directions.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
It doesn't have to. Well, no, it does,
should.
because it has to back up.
It has to be the Y.
I assume that
You can't have a one-direction Y.
No, you're right.
Right,
You're right.
right,
But
right.
at the same time, it's backing up. The head would then have to raise. So there's some new math involved.
Yes.
But the idea is you can print things continually. So they will, as they print, they will continue to go down the bed, and you start to print more.
It's a thingomatic.
And it gets to the end of the bed, and they come off, like they peel off, and they fly off they fall off the edge of the bed, and you.
So is the bed heated differently? Because you want the bed to cool down before you peel that stuff off.
Well, it's not that large of a printer. I'm not sure it even really needs a heated bed.
Probably it's just doing PLA and
you just pry off as it.
No, I think it's flexible. So, it's a belt.
Yeah.
So the fact that the
Right.
belt curves, it's going to just kind of peel off automatically.
Got it. So you could really have a bucket at the end of this, and take off your.
Well,
prints.
this is what MakerBot did with the Thingomatic, 10 years ago.
But they didn't do it at an angle.
No. They just did it they just put a conveyor belt in there.
Right.
I looked at this. I'm like, okay, yet another sort of odd set of motion. But they're doing it with the Delta printers. They're doing quote unquote new math. They're doing non-orthogonal axes in a lot of these different things because the computer doesn't care.
Right. But does the print head do the physics work when you have your nozzle? I guess is a nozzle then.
Oh, I think it's still
No.
extruding straight down.
Okay, so the nozzle.
No, it's got to be extruded
At an angle?
I think so.
What would benefit?
I don't think they made. There's no way that they're angling the hot end.
No, I think that hot end is still pointing straight down. I think the mount.
So it does this number.
Yeah, it just
I
does.
see what you
It's
mean.
like it's like.
So why do you need that axis? Why do you need the Z axis at an angle at all? Why couldn't it just be like?
Well, that was kind of my question. I don't. I other than making it compact, and it just was weird.
It is very strange. It's interesting though. If you need to print a lot of small things,
And when you're talking about small things is the problem, because when you're talking about having the Z axis, maybe not technically at a non-orthogonal axis direction, you're limiting at the close end how high your Z axis can be. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know.
You can only print as high. I guess it doesn't matter because
it
the
can
Y-axis
move.
moves.
Yeah, you
but
can
then
go
can't
to the far
retract.
end.
But you can't retract. You can't print large things with a wide surface area.
Yeah. No.
Right?
You're exchanging one thing for another.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting new design.
We're talking about this in circles. It's tough, really tough. It's almost like describing baseball to someone who hasn't seen it. But you have to look at a picture or watch a video about this to get what we're talking about. But the theory is that you have your own production line as long as you have enough material. And I don't know if they've built in a system for you to stop the prints and fuse your filaments, but you can print indefinitely, and you could have a really long print, I guess.
And they're definitely not the first persons to use this. I see there's another company called Black Belt.
Yeah, they have a Kickstarter coming up.
Yeah, that's doing a similar setup.
If you wanted to print something low relief, not high Z-axis, but you want it really long, like a sign or something, and want it to be one fused piece, I guess this would be good for that. Yeah, good for sign printing.
So they're calling what I would call like the flat layer, the belt. They're calling that Z, right? Because that's the infinite Z. They're saying it
Yeah.
has infinite Z, 6x6 in both other directions.
Yeah.
6x6 by infinity.
I think what we've done is we've made 3D printing this thing that is a solution for all manufacturing. And the stuff that they're talking about, I mean, 3D printing is great, and I've been using it for years and years, and I still use it
3D
often.
printing.
But it's, there's so much, so many better ways of making big stuff. When you start wanting to do something that's 10 feet long, I don't know that 3D printing is really the right technology.
No. But I think for mass producing a lot of little things, if you're someone who can only afford $2,000 and some PLA.
And time is free.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
Exactly, exactly.
It is such a slow
but
technology,
that
but
exists.
Yeah, no, it
Check it out, dude. The hot end is at an angle.
What?
Look at that. You see that?
Oh, it is. You're right.
That is, so there you go. I'd love
They're
to see this
fighting
thing.
gravity.
I want to play with this. And there's a video of it in action, but I want to play with one. Very cool.
Yeah, we'd love to get one in and test that out. And I think that is it for technology news. I do want to thank, again, the sponsor. Support for today's show comes from Squarespace. Whatever your next big idea might be, count on Squarespace to help you create an eye-catching online platform that brings it to life. Whether you need a portfolio, a store, or a blog to share your ideas, Squarespace gives you everything you need to look like an expert right from the start. You can even get a unique domain, which strengthens your brand and makes it easier for visitors to find you. You can add or arrange your content and features with just a click of the mouse. Never anything to install. All works off a web browser. You don't have to upgrade anything. And if you do have a question, Squarespace's award-winning 24/7 customer support can help you with any problem, no matter how technical or trivial seeming. Think of them as your very own IT department. So make your next move and start your free trial at squarespace.com today. Just use the offer code TEST, T-E-S-T, to get 10% off your first purchase. Again, that's T-E-S-T to get a discount off your first purchase on Squarespace, and that supports not only them, but us, and lets us do this podcast as well.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
All right.
Echo Arena. It's back.
It's coming back for another weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a long weekend, even longer
know.
this time.
So Jeremy and I, on our last projections episode, could not stop just gushing about this game. Echo Arena, Lone Echoes, multiplayer. It's like not disc golf in Zero G, but it's like Ender's Game. Ender's Game in VR, and it totally is compelling. And I know you couldn't stop thinking about it, Jeremy. And it is, the beta is coming back. The game's coming out like in 2 weeks.
Well, the single player game.
Oh, so Echo
Well,
Arena.
they both.
Oh, okay.
Day
Yeah,
and day.
The whole game's going to come out in 2 weeks, but this is just more encouragement for people to get more practice in the multiplayer. Have they confirmed the multiplayer game is going to be free forever? Once
No, not forever. It's for a limited time only.
And they're branching it off into its own game. It's not going to be
Right.
included with the
single player game.
single player game.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
Echo Arena is a totally separate SKU, but
Wow.
due to the sponsorship with Intel for the esports league,
Right.
they're releasing it for free for a limited time. They haven't announced how long that will last.
I hope it's indefinite. They need players.
Well, yeah. They're going to get the players they need, I think, from this initial wave.
But if it's going to be a month of free play, let's say it's a month, right? It's going to
Yeah.
be great for people playing that
no,
month.
I don't know. It's like if you download it, it's yours.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just free play for a month.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's free to. So anyone with VR, when it comes out, get the game.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Take advantage
We'll
of it.
remind you.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you have VR, today is your lucky day because today, the day this podcast goes live, is the start of the new beta, which lasts through the weekend, if not through Monday.
Yeah, 6th through the 10th, I think is what it said.
And they haven't announced officially yet whether or not it will support parties this time, because the last beta did not. You had to just do random matchmaking. But it appears, if you read the description, that it's possible that this next one will include
I can't wait.
parties.
We got to party up.
Party up.
All right. Another big VR release. This is in support of the new Spider-Man Homecoming movie. I think it's out in a week or two. Also getting great reviews. There's a VR Spider-Man experience that you can get now for free.
It's super fun for a minute.
How is that as long as it lasts?
Yeah, so there's a tutorial, and then there's like just the tiniest taste. I mean, like just the sniff of a gameplay, and you're like, oh yay! And I was playing it, and I verbalized like yes, and then it was done, and I'm like, what?
So you can shoot webs.
You can shoot. There's like I think 3 or 4 different web types, and the little tutorial like you would expect, and it's like, look, the game engine is there, and there's a bunch of there's assets, and they've clearly they've gotten all of these.
Is it a web shooting simulator or is it a web swinging simulator?
Well, I don't want to give anything away.
Okay,
Yeah, it's only a minute, Norm.
all right.
So wait, is it a demo for a bigger game?
I couldn't figure this out, it's almost like it's to promote the movie.
It is, right? So they're not going to spend $100 million on the game.
But the game, it's like, it's right there.
Maybe it's a proof of concept. If Sony was smart, put the resources in to make a good, compelling demo. And it's been hit or miss, like these VR demos to promote movies, like the Martian stuff. Not that great. But if it's good and people are talking, if the movie's going to make money. If people are talking about this VR experience, then put some money in there.
Well, and clearly some people that it wasn't just thrown together by just some weekend hackers on Unity. Yeah. Like there's some clear understanding of the limitations of VR and how to limit motion sickness and things like that. Like you kind of notice some of the techniques that they use and you're like, oh wait, this has potential.
So here's what I think it really is. It's a business thing, right? The Sony has the movie rights,
the assets,
and they have not just assets, but they have the rights to pay for this development for a marketing / promo piece of software, but not a game. I bet that then needs to be sold to someone like Activision.
Sure.
And what they did was probably hire a developer who has VR experience to make this demo with those assets. But for it to be a full game, it needs to be a whole separate contract, a whole full thing. And
you're
even
right.
even if it's even if people love it, it's in the hands of someone else to turn it into something fuller.
Yeah.
Which again, maybe it's not out of the realm of possibility, but in the scope of what this is, it could be that.
If it was 30 seconds longer, like it would be 10 times better.
Wow.
And I mean,
holy smokes.
No, I mean, it's just like they just give you such and you're just like, oh yes, now we're going. And it's like, yeah. So anyways, but everybody should download because it's free.
Okay, I'll check it out. There was an interesting thread on Reddit the past couple of days, where some sales data was charted. It was put together by Daniel at realities.io, and he used a tool called Steam Spy. Have you ever used that?
No.
You familiar with that? So it's a web app that uses Steam's API so that they can get all this sales data and usage data. And he plugged in all the VR titles, and then he charted it out so you can see the success rate of a lot of VR titles. And this is strictly Steam. This is not, this doesn't consider home.
But this includes both Vive users and Oculus users.
Yes, but of course, like it's just Steam sales, but it doesn't consider bundles. It doesn't consider like third parties or sales. So take it with a grain of salt. But you get the general gist of where we are.
And by far, there's a big gap between the top 3 or 4 titles and the rest.
The top 3 or 4 are Job Simulator, which had already boasted that they were the best-selling VR game of all time. So they are at the top. They've made $2 million. That's
this is money.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
The right is money. Then Tilt Brush, which surprises me.
Cheaper game, but... Or cheaper
not
piece
even
of software.
game, yeah.
Cheaper piece of software, but there are more Tilt Brush users than and Google owns both.
And then that's right.
They bought Job Simulator.
Good investment.
Data. They are driven by data.
And then raw data, and then Arizona Sunshine, and then everything else is like half as much.
Right. Virtual Desktop, Bridge Crew, which is a big number for how.
Yeah. Well, it was also AAA pricing.
Yes, that's
that
true.
helped.
I bet that helped.
And then that's it. Like everything you've said is everything over $1 million.
Right. And everything else is
sub. Yeah. And most games are way under. You probably even $100,000. Like there's no money in VR development right now, kids.
So where's this dev budget coming from? I mean, other than from Oculus or from Vive.
Well, that's why we see a lot of titles like Echo Arena, Lone Echo, that are funded by Oculus.
Let's talk about some of the games that are on the bottom of the list that I think deserve more attention.
Let's do that. That's a good idea, Norm.
Like, for example, I haven't played all of them, but Unseen Diplomacy, I think.
Have you done that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's great.
So you need a huge VR space for that, and it's Vive only.
Yep.
but it does this redirective thing where you use the same play space to explore different environments.
Because you're walking in a circle,
Right.
corridors and corridors,
yeah.
and they can break the rules of every corridor, every door you walk through is a teleporter, essentially. But it really makes great use of room scale. It's not the longest game, so that I think definitely check that out. And it's in the bottom of the list. We're talking about games that have made less than, I don't know, $50,000 or $100,000. Let's see.
Climbey's up there. I mean, it's not that high up, but I love Climbey. That is such an interesting movement mechanic, and it's social.
Final Approach is on there. I'm surprised.
Me too.
Final Approach is a great entry in a VR game.
That came out pretty early, too, and there wasn't a whole lot of competition.
I'm actually surprised. I mean, one of the first games that I bought was Eagle Flight. I actually didn't like the game that much, but again, it was expensive. So
that was an Oculus. It was an Ubisoft game that I think was in partnership with Oculus, so probably made most of its sales on the Oculus platform.
Oh, that's why. That's why it's so low. Not on Vive.
Not on Vive.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm scrolling up. Climbey, Hollow Ball. Table Tennis VR 11. Come on.
I know. No,
people should try that.
Yeah, I'm with. There was actually a new trailer for yet another table tennis game.
Wow. I'm surprised that Batman Arkham VR is pretty low on the list. I think that's worth it's worth the money.
Fairly new.
Yeah,
and it was also probably a lot of people played it on PSVR if they had it.
Yeah.
Yep. That's that.
All right. Not a ton. It's only been a couple working business days since our last podcast, but I think that actually does it for this week. Of one final topic, and let's play the music. What we've been testing.
Did I mute again?
Testing this week. Hey, what have you guys been testing?
You know what there should be? There should be an override. Like, I want this app to override the mute settings, the system mute settings.
That's dangerous.
That is so dangerous.
So dangerous.
It would be great for podcasting.
And that would be it. Because how many advertisers would go, I'm going to unmute this so I can play my ads really loud in your face?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
definitely not the web browser.
Not the web browser.
For sure. It's arrived. It's finally here.
For Jeremy.
For one of us, yeah.
The Glowforge has arrived. Production units have arrived.
Yeah. So I think we mentioned last week
fanfare.
Did we mention last week that it had shipped?
Yes.
And UPS had lost it.
Right.
That's where we
did
left
mention that.
this radio drama.
Right.
And now
UPS had lost your Glowforge.
They found it and they delivered it and it was broken.
It's a 70-pound box. You open it up, set it up. You sent me a message. My tube is making
Took
sounds.
me a minute. Like the coolant was just going constantly, and I could see coolant in the tube, and it seemed like it wasn't totally full. And then I took a closer look, and the actual laser tube had cracked.
Eek.
Now, according to the forum, which is like the most active forum, I mean, for a community that has not received units in great volume yet, I was surprised just how many people are active on this community. But wow, I posted, and it's just like the thread took off. They said I'm the first. I'm the first to have a cracked tube. So congratulations
Lucky
to me.
you.
Exactly. Glowforge took good care of me. They shipped me a second unit. Arrived with a coolant leak. However, the very next day I received the third unit.
Whoa.
And the third unit was the charm.
Oh my! I didn't know you had another unit.
Yeah.
Oh my! Same thing.
I had a stack of Glowforges like this.
Wow.
Show off.
So let's be clear. They really treated you right with how fast they got replacement units to you, and they also did they say that the shipping. The shipping system was going to be different, or the packing method?
They have revised the packing. However, Dan kindly called me, both times there was a problem. And he explained that they do have new packing materials that will be arriving at distributors at their warehouse this week, I think. The 3 units I got, all the old packing material.
Got it. But the third one did work.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have received them throughout the country in working conditions. So,
it's your UPS guy.
It's not my guy. Because I will defend him to the death, but it is something in UPS. It is something between warehouse and my guy. In any case, I got it hooked up and working in 10 minutes. It is
That's impressive.
If you've never, it is so easy. If you've never used a laser cutter before and you get a Glowforge, you don't know what you're taking for granted. It is so plug and play. It's crazy.
So the things, because we had a pre-production unit, we still have it, and there are things that were not enabled on the pre-production unit and the software. Let's not even talk about the engraved stuff, because we'll do a deep dive. You can use the full bed now.
You can't. Yes, I don't know what you mean by that. You can't actually cut to the edge of the material.
Right, but there's no red area that you can't cut to. Because previously they had restricted.
Material size is limited to 20 by 12. I don't know what the actual cut size
But that's what they promised. 20 by 12 is their quote-unquote bed size for that. You have the regular unit, not the Pro unit.
I don't know if I need the Pro. Yeah, I'm happy with the
because you're not manufacturing.
The only thing the Pro adds is 5 more watts to the laser, but also a pass-through system, so you get infinite Z.
But that's Z, and that's something we haven't tested because it's something that would need alignment and that uses the camera system. Have you tested the camera? Has the camera software been optimized in terms of scanning?
It still doesn't pick up the QR code on the material if it's way off in the corner.
Oh, interesting.
There's nothing keeping because there's 2 cameras. There's the one on the actual lid, which gets the whole bed, but I'm surprised the one on the actual head can't go over there and read the QR code.
Right.
In any case, they're moving from those stickers to putting the QR code or whatever the code on the material, protective paper itself.
Got it.
So this is a short-term problem. But in any case, it's like you never level the bed. It's just auto. You drop the material in there. If it reads it, it knows what it is. If it doesn't read it, you just select what your material you put in there. As long as it's their proof grade materials, it has the settings built in.
Mm-hmm. How happy are you with the speed?
Perfectly happy. I mean,
are you doing cuts or engravings mostly?
Both.
Both, okay.
I mean, I'm not coming from a laser cut background. I'm coming from a 3D printing background, so the times
This seems instant.
these are way down.
For one layer.
So what are you doing for air filtering?
It's got built in, so it's got the fan built into it, and
so are you cutting plastics or just wood?
I've cut both.
Yeah.
There's an exhaust, there's a 4-inch dryer duct exhaust on the back, and I just have that routed straight out my garage door.
So I know because I've been doing laser cutting for years, and I've got lots of laser cutters and things. That's the biggest kind of challenge for me is when I want to cut, let's say, acrylic. The fumes from acrylic are just horrendous, and even just piping them out the window. If you've got another window open in your house somewhere, it's nasty.
Yeah, no, it does smell. Yeah, you can smell it.
So I know that's kind of the one thing that I haven't seen somebody tackle at a really great level is carbon filtering or sort of HEPA and all of those sorts of things.
Which is something they are going to hopefully deliver with
in December. They promised to deliver their filter. But it's a relatively small filter. I don't know how industrial it is in terms of how many hours you get out of it, but it's going to be fine for my purposes. And I'll be curious to see when it's completely self-contained. What does that smell like?
Yeah. And these are hobbyists cutters. Which again, saying that for today in this day and age, you can buy as a hobbyist
amazing.
A laser cutter.
That's great.
Is pretty mind blowing. We're gonna of course be testing it. Jeremy has his. We're going to hopefully get ours soon, and we'll be doing a full review and test. But I'm glad that people are getting them. I know people are stressing out about this. We got to evaluate the software. Have you had any hiccups in terms of connecting to their servers and things coming back? Some of in the pre-production unit, it just took a while sometimes.
They have not opened up the store, to their customers yet, which is potentially pretty cool, where you can go and you can buy designs and even click and they'll send you the materials to make the designs. That seems like a nice thing. It's like Thingiverse, but there's free and an unfree, a paid tier.
We don't want to burn out your laser, so we're going to wait for ours, but we definitely would love people to send us their SVG files if you want something tested on this, just to see what and we won't share them obviously, but we'd love to see what you would like to see test cut on our Glowforge, and we'll include that in our review.
One thing that has caught me a little bit by surprise is the cost of materials, because coming from a 3D printing standpoint, basically everything's free.
Like $25 for...
You pay $20-$30 for a kilogram of filament that lasts you the rest of your life. And then,
let's not say that, but
dude, it lasts a long time.
They do last a while.
And as Will Smith told me when I first got into the thing, things are basically free. Once you start printing, it's basically free. It uses so little filament.
So you just haven't discovered all the materials that are great to use. So the free source of material that I use all the time in my laser cutter, cardboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Because Amazon Prime just delivers it for free, like in truckloads.
Yeah.
So when I'm prototyping something and I'm doing like a mechanical thing, or what I've actually do, I do. Like when I'm making a weldment, like a piece of metal that I want to weld up, I will cut it first out of cardboard, and then I'll actually tape that to the piece of metal so I can use it as a template and to kind of line everything up.
Right.
So as a prototyping tool, cardboard is ideal. And then sort of the step up from there, Ace Hardware and I think Home Depot and other places, really thin. It's actually MDF, which is medium density fiberboard. You get it. I think it's say 2 or 3 millimeters thick. It's about the same thickness as cardboard. It cuts just about as fast. It almost use it like cardboard, but it's a little bit stiffer. But it's $1 or $2 for a big piece, and you can score it with a razor knife to get it to the shape that fits in your laser cutter. That's almost free. Yeah. And then after that, it's Tap Plastics or your plastic stores bin.
They have scraps.
The scrap bin.
Yeah.
It's $1 a pound or $2 a pound.
I'm going there after the show.
There you go.
That's awesome. Yeah. Scrounging for materials.
Scrounging.
Dumpster diving makes a lot more sense now. You talk about like finding sheets of stuff.
But you have to be careful, though. You have to know what it is, because polycarbonate or PVC.
Never PVC.
Yeah.
So that's also the benefit of the proof grade stuff, is that it's and from what we've used, they're all, the consistency is there.
And the prices are good too. Like, I was surprised.
You were surprised that I thought you meant in the other way.
No, I thought that the proof grade stuff would be premium pricing, but it's actually very competitive.
And we're getting how much in terms of free stuff for backers?
They send you a box to begin with.
Okay.
I don't know how much it is, but it's 10 sheets of various materials.
Got it.
Or so. And then you get a constant 10% discount.
Got it. Okay. All right. Very cool. I think that does it for us for this week's podcast. Thank you everyone out there for listening. And Zach, thank you so much for joining us. We got to have you back.
It's great. Super fun.
And if you have questions about prototyping, how to turn your maker hobby into maybe somewhat of a career, then send us your questions, and we'll put them in front of Zach in a future episode. And we'd love to visit your shop sometime.
Absolutely. You're always welcome.
We've been threatening to do so for years now.
You have.
Yeah, we're going to do it. Yeah. And do we have an outro?
We're already there?
Yeah.
What's coming up on Tested this week?
This week, things are a little slow this week. We're just coming back from vacation. But for our premium member community, we have a couple more how-tos. Frank and I paint some more alien busts. And we did a fun Let's Build that we filmed last week that will be coming up on the site in a week or two. So look out for those. We're getting ready for Comic-Con. We'll have some cool stuff we're showing at Comic-Con, a big project from Adam that we're unveiling. Ooh. And we got some hardware review. I got the new DJI Spark. I got to go test that. So you'll see all that stuff on the site in the coming weeks.
Here's an outro from Justin, a.k.a. Speed.
All right, here we go.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested. Blah, 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 VR, blah, 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 perfect platform for vision, movie, blah, 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 revenue tie-in, blah, blah.
I'm going to get another one, because we did that
one last week.
But it's so good.
Here's another one. Hot dog outro.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
My hot dog sucks. Jeremy's laughing at my hot dogs.
I think we did that one too. All right. Well, send us some new outros.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.